Call the Public Works Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Cindy,
Here.
Seth,
Here.
Todd,
Here.
Andrew,
Here.
Crystal.
Here. First period for public comment. Nobody is here. Anyone online would like to speak?
We have a couple people online. If anyone wants to make a public comment, they can do so at this time.
Okay, well, this week is Professional Municipal Clerks Appreciation Week. And I thought that if anybody deserves the proclamation read, it was Lori. So I'm going to read it. Cheryl too. Cheryl too. Sorry. Municipal clerk includes who all then? Okay, I apologize. You deserve it too.
Not a problem.
Okay. Whereas the office of the municipal clerk, whatever that is, no, a time-honored and vital part of local government and election administration, is critical to the endurance and prosperity of the state. And whereas Wisconsin's 1,850 professional municipal clerks and 72 county clerks consistently display courage, flexibility, and resilience, and pledge to be faithful and impartial in handling their official duties, upholding transparency and neutrality while rendering equal service to all. And whereas, among their many vital responsibilities, professional municipal clerks serve as the official record keepers of their respective municipalities, the legislative historian of their community, and the direct link between residents and their government to ensure transparency and communication between the governing bodies and the communities they serve. And whereas professional municipal clerks also provide essential support in the administration of elections, often preparing ballots, training election officials, tabulating and certifying election results, and dedicating themselves to conducting open, accurate, and fair elections in Wisconsin. And that's a big deal, yes. And whereas professional municipal clerks continually improve the administration of the responsibilities of their office through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, focus groups, and annual conferences across Wisconsin. And last but not least, whereas this week, the state of Wisconsin joins all Wisconsinites in recognizing and thanking professional municipal clerks for the important work they do for communities across the state. Therefore, I, Tony Evers, Governor of the state of Wisconsin, do hereby proclaim May 4th through the 10th, 2025 as Professional Municipal Clerks Appreciation Week.
Thank you.
Whereas, no. But thank you, Lori and Cheryl, for all you do. I mean, yeah. Okay, approval of committee minutes from April 22nd, 2025.
This is Crystal. I would move approval of those minutes without additions or corrections.
I don't second it.
Were you here, Todd? Were you at the meeting? Okay. That's true, you were. Any additions or corrections by anyone else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Review and approval of salt shed bids. Sarah.
Okay, well, this is round 2 of our salt shed bids. Oh, I'm not sharing. I'm just sharing with me. That's not helping you at all. Okay, so as a continuation, I can certainly share the different bids that we had from the different suppliers or bidders. But the low bid that we would look at, that was O'Shea, which does a lot of these types of builds. And the base bid was $516,000. There were a couple alternates that were deducts. One was a slightly different type of siding, and the other one was us doing some removal of material, about 2 foot of material, and and then they would come in and put the fill in. So it's just us kind of hauling out. So that saved us, those are negatives, so that was 13,000. So that gave our bid that we're asking to accept to be 503,000. But what does that mean for our overall budget? So we obviously need to continue to have a contingency. So a 5% contingency is pretty standard going into construction. So after you receive the bids. So that's that 150. Obviously, we hope not to use it, but you never know. And then Chosen Valley, that would be to do soil sampling. So as they're putting the material back, making sure that the foundation material is properly compacted and can take the weight, the loadings. And then engineering, we always had 25,000 worth of engineering, and we're still not at 25,000 yet, but I want to be careful because once we get into the actual construction of it, depending on how much is needed, there's always a potential that we may go an additional 5,000. So I, again, want to try to make sure I've got everything in here. So that puts us at a 561,600 as the total project cost, which is well over what we had originally budgeted, which was that 300,000. However, I know that's like drops like a lead balloon, but however, we all know we need to make a move on this. And in fact, literally today, I got another notice from the DOT about our deficiencies of our salt sheds. And I have to report back as to what we're doing to make this situation better. Obviously last year we did indicate we were looking at building a salt shed. So, you know, that would be an obvious answer, but I will say this time, we actually aren't just under minor deficiencies for the condition of roof and walls, but now our sand salt shed mix building actually has major deficiencies listed. So long story short, it's not being unnoticed, the condition of buildings, not to mention just how they don't look very good. So Nate and I have had some conversations about what to do about this. I know Nate's been gone all day and we didn't really get to connect, but you have been looking at how we might go about this.
Yeah, before I go into that, do you want to share a little bit, just to reiterate, something you shared at the last meeting about the quality of the bids in relation to
Oh, sure.
possible fluctuations in prices due to concerns about the economy? You know what I'm getting at?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so one of the first questions that we asked because of the consideration with tariffs and things like that going on was whether there was like some sort of changes made in the bids to account for that concern. And Bill O'Shea was spoken to by Matt, our engineer, and he said that that was not something that he had factored in. And if you look at, and I can pull them up here, although I think I need to put them in a share in a little bit different way. They were pretty consistently, the cost of the building itself was pretty consistent. Let me just quickly pull that up for you. Zoom. Okay, so like if you look at this top number here, whoops. Right, trying to get everything in the right position. You know, you can see like this bottom end, they were pretty close, all of these in that 340,000 for the building itself, which was what people were telling us from the very beginning. We had one bidder in particular that felt they could, well, I shouldn't even call them bidder. We had one outfit that built these things that felt like they could get the whole project done for 300,000, but that was isolated to that one outfit, and we weren't able to get that number even close with others. And so that was part of the reason we bid it out, was because we wanted to actually see this number come in, and that contractor did not end up bidding on the project. So we did try to follow up a number of times to find out what was preventing them from wanting to bid, and they never replied. So we weren't able to even try to figure out like if there was something in particular that they felt was challenging. So I guess that's one thing, and a lot of it's like the earthwork cost, right? So 90,000, 80,000, and just like getting the site grading, foundation, the concrete for that. So I guess going back to, he was required to bring back the water bottle, and he made sure I saw that. So you can see that, it's pretty consistent for what we were expecting to come through, and the cost that's related to like things that would be tariff related, like the building itself fell really close in line with what we were expecting to see. Is that kind of what you meant, Nate?
Yeah, I think the key to that conversation would be the inevitable question of when we're deciding to accept a bid or not, asking ourselves, will it ever be any cheaper trying again later, right? And the answer that I think Sarah provided us with now again here today is that the bids that came in are as expected, and that in conversations with the winning bidder that they weren't really impacted by speculation on the tariffs, and that this is just what we can expect to see going forward. Is that just to kind of reiterate what you said, right?
Yeah, I am no expert in buildings, but the engineer and the contractor had indicated that, and they felt that was accurate.
So it's sort of the price we're going to see regardless of when we take it. And obviously, as time goes on, inflation will continue to creep up the price. So with that, the conversation about how we pay for it, there is no, magic fix about how to pay for these things, right? Sarah kind of queued it up as if I had some like secret plan, and I don't. It's literally going to be a borrowing project. And the project has certainly evolved over time. When we first looked at this project, the scope was much smaller, where we were talking about roof replacement for $95,000. We actually went so far as to borrow for that in 2021, and then have since reallocated that money to different street projects. So now we're back at the table, and as of last year, Sarah's correct, the target we were looking at for this project was $300,000. But it's important to know that even at that point, that $300,000 was certainly far above what had been planned in the capital improvement plan from 2019 to 2024. So we're already screaming in 210,000 over 205,000 over what we had anticipated. Now we're looking at $560 thousand, and that's almost $500,000 now over what this project originally started as back in the capital improvement plan in 2019. Again, scope changed dramatically, but price has inflated above and beyond that. So what that means is that accepting this project is going to bump other things out for the 2025-2029 plan. We have it in draft form right now. I think a copy of that has been shared with the council and sort of generally discussed, and it's been in Eller's hands. And part of what we needed Ellers to do is sort of tell us, is our plan workable? Are we overextending, underextending? Are we approaching certain projects in a different way? Are there maybe some different ways of funding things that would support what we want to do? And so they're going to come back with that. It's been slow going, but we're at this point here where at some point before all those answers are solved with Ellers and the long-term 5-year capital improvement plan, we're going to have to make a decision on this salt shed. It just is what it is. And what this group is going to have to know, and then the council, when we take this to council, is like, this will impact other things that we can do. And that's not for me to say what exactly is going to get cut off, because the capital improvement review team and then the council is going to have to make a decision on what the final capital improvement plan for the next 5 years looks like. But what I'm saying is this most definitely will reduce other things that we can do. It just will. There's no way we can absorb $500,000 in general borrowing without an entire project or two possibly coming off. And I don't know what those are yet. We'll decide it, but that's the big thing I wanted to share tonight. But if the Public Works Committee feels like, yep, we're in a pinch point here, we have no choice but to actually do something with this project. And I will note that Public Works has done a great job of sort of trying to buy time as we figure out what's going on with the North Point development. That was a large part of the reason why this project has extended to this point in time when it was scheduled for back in 2021 is the unknown. And there certainly was a lot of unknown with that project at that time. But it does sound from what Sarah said, we're at a point where we need to make a decision on what we're going to do here. And so I just want you to know what the financial implications of that are today. I have lined it up with Ellers to be ready to borrow for the additional funding. I generally think we shouldn't have a problem borrowing for it, where we would be well under our debt capacity. So it's not like we can't find the money to pay for this. It's just about the domino effect it has on other projects.
Next question, is it still gonna be 100 foot or is that 80 foot now, the bid that's in?
I know we talked about different kinds of sheds. We don't want to go back and reconsider anything like that. Wasn't there? Or is it just takes more time?
The Public Works staff has felt pretty strongly that this is the way to go. There was a lot of concern. Well, one, the original plan with lifting the building, essentially using the roof and then putting concrete, it still is keeping us in our current footprint, which part of the problem with it is that we've just been overloading and it's really not a great space. Like we've been probably loading the 600 ton in there and it's probably only like 450, like we've been pushing the limits. So that's one of the reasons why just like taking what we currently have and trying to make it better isn't great. We looked at those fabric type structures and it was felt that just the way that the conditions are up here for us, that they just wouldn't last with the wind, and felt like that wasn't a good investment because it was cheaper, but it wasn't like half, you know what I mean? It was more like 2/3 of the cost. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, guys.
When we went to Black River and looked at that, they had a hoop building there. And like Sarah said, you can't pile it up, right? You can only break, I don't believe that they even had concrete side. I believe they had block sides, if I'm not mistaken. Like the big concrete blocks they make down here there's some down in the Park Bowl that over by the lower high rise. If there's blocks that you can stack up, and that's what they did on there. But you can't pile it up real high because them blocks ain't going to take a lot of pressure. And what I think that particular unit was either a 15 or 20. Don't quote me on that. It wasn't the lifespan wasn't great on it, not compared to a new building. It was nice. It was nice. I ain't gonna lie about that, but you couldn't get the capacity in there because you can't push it up. Which I know the shed down there for years. We've been doing it forever. We would fill it up and then we'd get the push blade from the county and we'd push it up even higher, take it right to the rafters. So right or wrong, that's what we did, and so it's lasted. As the fuck tipped over yet.
Did you have anything to add, Wade? How many years is this one supposed to last?
Well, they say that their standard design years is 20 years, but I would expect that we would get much longer than that.
Well, it doesn't sound like we have a lot of choice here, folks. So,
How long do we have before you have to respond to the
Yeah.
letter?
yeah,
20 days for the letter, but I think saying like I did last time, which they'll probably question me on, but being able to say that we've accepted a bid would certainly be more satisfactory than we're still in the planning process, which is what I replied to last.
and then it's 60 days after that 60 days, they hold the price, the contract.
Yeah, well, that was since the bid.
Yeah,
It was actually 45, but they
45.
were willing to hold it for 60 if necessary.
so we're okay with that. We're within that.
Yeah. Excuse me, we should certainly start taking
going.
action. But yes, we should be fine.
Yeah, the reality, so Sarah and I looked at the timeline, and ideally it would be nice to accept a bid at the same moment that you get your bids in for the debt issuance. but there's no way we can buy that much time. Right now, we're scheduled to have the debt issuance for this project, Hanson Farm, and I think like the other half of the dump truck, all landing on the 24th of June. And even with the extended amount of time that this contractor has given us, that only buys us until like the 8th of June. So really,
Okay.
there's no value into us sitting on this any longer unless anybody has any bright ideas about how to pay for it or do something different that hasn't been brought up today. But
Okay. Yeah.
Mrs. Todd will accept the bid from O'Shea's. Bear with me on this now. For O'Shea's, building of, is it 516,000?
Actually, the base bid of 516 and alternate 2 and alternate 3 as deducts puts us to a base bid of 500,000 and 3,000. Sorry, 500.
You don't mention the other stuff.
That is just for our budget purposes. I don't know that. So if you're asking about the bid would be the cost.
so the global project budget, as Sarah's pointed out, is 561,000. But right now, you're just talking about accepting the construction bid, which is $503,000.
Okay.
This is Crystal, I'll second.
Any further discussion or questions? Seth, AJ?
I am at the worst spot for service, so hopefully you can hear me. But I will be abstaining from voting just for the possible conflict of interest that our bids were involved in the process.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it sounds like a roll call vote.
Seth is abstaining. Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
and Cindy.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you for all the work on that anyway. And the opinions. It's nice to have someone who has opinions on this, knows what they're talking about. Discussion with possible action on fire line proposal for 5-year maintenance NFPA 25 for library.
All right. So the first thing I said when I got this was like, what? Why am I getting this again? We just did this. And so I do have an explanation as to why we're seeing this again. Oops, that's not the right one. One of these is the one that I want. Or is it? Of course, I probably closed that one out that I needed. Hey, EJ. Ugh, I darn it did. Give me one moment, please. I can try to explain while I do this. Hopefully I don't mess that up. So the gist of it is that we approved the annual maintenance, which is a required per fire code maintenance that is required to happen on the structure. And so they did that. And then what came of it was part of the inspection is to go through whether there was what they call an internal inspection, and that is supposed to happen every 5 years. So they actually marked, like we got an annual inspection report, and we actually got that as a deficiency, which I think I have that on here. Why am I having a hard time finding it? Yeah, I was just say it was easily found earlier today. Annual inspection, sprinkler. Maybe this is the right one. Nope, that's the one we had for the annual one. Gosh darn it. Here we go. Okay, and so essentially it's never been done at the library. So we were obviously not in compliance with that. So that's why we ended up getting a non-compliance or a deficiency when they did the inspection for that. So essentially this is remedying that. And so what the difference is So an annual inspection, they flow the water, they check the flow switch, make sure it's calling properly. They do a visual inspection, they check the backflow preventer, and they make any list of deficiencies. So when they went through the one at the library, they ended up having this deficiency, which is performance of the 5-year maintenance as required by code. And that is where they actually start taking apart parts of the internal structure and taking a look at them. They check like the FD connection. They take out the check valve and make sure it's working properly, and they replace the pressure gauges in the system. So it's certainly more comprehensive than the maintenance check or the annual inspection that we have. This puts us back into compliance, and we do require that we do it once every 5 years for both buildings. So, eventually in 2 years, we're going to end up having to do that for this building on top of the current inspection. And so then this would be good for 5 years until we need to do it again at the library. So their price was $1,145. I did not get to talk to Nate about the ability for the maintenance budget to absorb this.
It should be fine. The reality is that Sarah and Tyrell and I think Wade helps generally with the main, not much. Yeah, I mean, you oversee the guy who oversees the guy, you know what I mean? I think it's a group effort between the three of you. I think it's just what I would say is I don't think you have a choice but to move forward with this. But you're going to have to be cognizant as other things happen in the city, just to be really mindful of the maintenance budget, right? Like part of what you have the maintenance budget, you can work within those means. And I generally trust for you guys to do what you do, but it just means that if other things come up that are more elective, you're not going to be able to do them. Right. So
The sad thing is we haven't had many of those yet this year.
what's that?
Elective expenses have not come up very frequently this year.
No, not so
Yeah.
far, but and hopefully nothing more comes up this year, but we all know that's not a reality when you own buildings. So yeah, I think you got to do what you got to do. And it seems like a lot, but what do I know about doing a 5-year inspection on a sprinkler system, right? Like I'm assuming that's a fairly involved process. And if you guys think that price is generally appropriate for the work that they're doing, that would be my only question, is not how much, but is it an appropriate amount for what they're giving us?
I'm just wondering, is there any way to sync the two so that they're both getting done in the same year, and maybe we could save them a little trip time? I don't know.
Yeah, I did ask if it was a substitution or and he said no. And I mean, I think in the future, they showed up, but they saw that it was out of compliance. Then they come back and say, can we do this? Right. I mean, they weren't prepared to do it at the time. I would hope that when we have City Hall, that it could be one fell swoop, like in a couple of years. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
Did-
good. I was
did you-
glad that question was asked. Yeah.
Did you or Tyrell ever be around these guys when they were working?
I see Tyrell's on. I think he came through with them when they did the annual inspection.
Okay.
I don't know if he can answer or not, but
Yeah, I
Okay.
was around with them.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're looking for a motion or discussion or questions. Sounds like another one we have to do.
Well, this is Crystal, and I would move approval of the proposal for fire line for the 5-year maintenance NFPA 25 for the library, and I believe the amount is $1,145.
Zagey, I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion, questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Todd,
Hi.
Andrew.
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
and Seth.
I,
Motion carries. Review and approval for filling street auxiliary worker position. Did I skip one? Discussion with possible action on non-lapsing funds for street maintenance materials account from 2024.
all right, so this was tabled from last time. Nate was not able to look through it in the same detail that he wanted to, but I believe he is now prepared to make a statement on whether he feels that it's done properly.
So we had looked at it together, Sarah and I looked at it together, and I think the motion that was, help me out, Lori, from the minutes last time was a motion was made to accept the plan for the lapsing fund contingent on my review, or was it just plan to bring back?
It was pending your review.
Yeah, so I don't think we really need to actually go through it tonight then. I reviewed it with Sarah and told her that based on what I saw in the detail ledger and her explanation of just kind of how money's landed in the different GLs last year, that her analysis was appropriate and that the $54,000 carryover was total was available for it. So I don't think you need to redouble.
Well, I think we have to designate though where it's going.
Oh, okay, sure. Yes, then let's do that.
So I had a thought on this. One of the things I talked about was, could we use it for something like the salt shed or whatnot? Which is certainly something that we could designate it as, but I wondered if it would be most fluid if we put it under street maintenance, given that theoretically we could spend this money first, and then if there was something left over in street maintenance that we could allocate to the salt shed. It just might be easier, but if there's a preference, we most certainly can designate it in a different account. This would have come from street maintenance originally. Maintenance materials.
Sarah, can you explain what you mean when you say if there's anything left in street maintenance?
Well, I mean, I've budgeted street maintenance to not account for this money except for that 11,000 that you had budgeted in. And so that way we know that we can use this money, because essentially this was, so even though I budgeted for this year to budget for what was allocated, this is essentially street maintenance money that we never spent. And so we have a lot of projects on the go. It'd be nice to see where we end up. We may end up having more than 54,000. We may end up having 50,000 left over. And I think that way, because we know we already have expenses that we know we'll expend in 2025, then we can consume the carryover, the non-lapsing fund amount, because like we're kind of getting into this cycle where we're continually lapsing funds in this category, and then decide once we're there, what do we want to do with it? It gives us a little bit of time to be flexible, I guess, was what I was thinking, rather than knowing today exactly where we want it to land.
I will say that the auditors are going to want to know what specific projects you're using that non-lapsing fund for,
Sure.
because they asked me that this year. So if you're going to be doing that throughout the year, using that up before you use the budgeted ones, make sure that when you're putting it through on any types of your vouchers, that you
Just put
designate that
non-lapsing.
as non-lapsing so that I can allocate those for that.
Sure.
For that reason, Lori, would it be simplest just to allocate at this point, like designate like $11,000 will be allocated towards street maintenance projects, right? And then the other remainder will be allocated towards the salt shed. That way it's like over and done with and we don't have to worry about tracking the money further this year. I'm just trying to think about how to do it simplest. I'm not saying that there wouldn't be, because we're gonna go borrow for money. Like I said, we already have the borrowing set up for the 500 and it would be $530,000 for the salt shed. That money can be used for the salt shed and for other street related projects. But if the auditors are most concerned about the non-lapsing funds, again, wouldn't it just be easier to say, this is what we used it for at this time?
It doesn't matter as long as I know it going in.
Which one
I
it is.
I keep track of it on a separate sheet, and then they just look at my sheets during audit and say, oh, okay, this is this,
Okay.
and your entries are done, period. So it's not
As
that
long as
difficult.
Sarah can be diligent about nailing down and getting to that exact total, and she's okay with that approach, then yeah.
I'll be spending more than that, unfortunately. But yes, I will be mindful when I sign off on my invoices that I say it's non-lapsing. I'll just ensure that all of them happen first.
Okay, so we need a motion for the non-lapsing funds to go into the street
Yeah, the same one that it came
Maintenance
from.
budget, is
It's
that what you
called
call it?
street maintenance materials, I believe.
Okay.
It's this one
N-
here.
It's going to be to lapse the 54,763.38 into the non-lapsing street maintenance materials account. If that makes sense.
And what was that number that you had? Was it 45 or?
50
excuse me,
54,763.38.
Just wanted to make sure it was right.
I'll make a motion for exactly what Lori said.
I'll
You-
second what Lori said.
I'll pretty it up for you.
You'll second what AJ said.
Okay, all right. I'm saying what AJ said and what Lori said.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, roll call. I assume.
Yeah, Andrew.
Aye.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Seth,
I,
and Todd.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Review and approval for filling street, filling street, I was thinking filling station, sorry. Filling street auxiliary worker position.
Well, this was also a carryover of last week's, 2 weeks ago meeting. And hopefully that gave some time for folks to think about it. So, I don't even know if it's official, but we're in a hiring freeze. And the request was that any new hiring that happens in the hiring freeze is approved first by the public or by the committee that's responsible for whoever's hiring. So that would be the Public Works Committee here. And so the position that we have currently vacant, because Norris has already left, is the street auxiliary worker position. Norris's position was operator, although I think preferably we would internally promote into that spot and then hire in an entry level position. Which we were hoping would be a savings in itself, that might allow us to have our current operator in training who never, or it is an operator in training, who never actually got a bump with the new title, to give them a little bit there, and we should still have some left over as well. So we can go into more, that's, I think, the primary reason Wade's here as well. He spoke a bit about it last time. We just really feel like this position needs to be filled. And we don't, why now? It seems like we're a long ways away from winter, which I would say is probably the most critical time to make sure we're not shorthanded. In the summertime, we have seasonal help. We have some flexibility. When we're plowing, it's all hands on deck. We already steal from the utilities, not really steal, but utilize utility employees for that job, 2 of them, which I would say puts a significant burden on the utilities as well, because that prevents them from having a crew to do work. And that's just the way we've done it, but it's, we're tapping everyone when we do that. Not every public works employee, but everyone that we really can have available. And when we do fill a position, it takes, time to post it, time to interview, time to wait for that person to be able to leave their position. And it has been a while since we've been able to hire in a person with a CDL right off the go. And we've said in both situations that we've done that recently, that the person has 2 months to obtain it, and it's hard to obtain in 2 months. So I would say not hiring now definitely puts us in a vulnerability for the winter already. So that's why we'd like to do it sooner than later. And as I mentioned, it's already vacant.
Pardon me, can I hear a little more about the hiring freeze that you're talking about?
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. We got cut off at the last meeting and just simply didn't have enough time to speak on it, but essentially what I'm seeing from my chair as your administrator is that next year's budget is going to continue to be a challenge. And at the same time, across the city, we are not paying competitive wages. And there's no way for us to continue to absorb inflation the way we have over the last 4 years. 1 year alone was 8%, right? We're talking about today, how many different additional maintenance costs that we have on us, right? Like it's continuing to pile up and pile up. And so over the course of the years, we've done what's called incremental budgeting, where every department has generally the same budget. We make slight variations up and down in order to address priorities or whatever it may be. This year, what I would recommend to the council is that we approach the budget in a more comprehensive manner, and we may have to make more substantial changes to departmental funding. And so what that manifests now is the biggest changes that you can make to a department's funding is in personnel. And so we're making it known to all department heads, and this is why it's a hiring freeze is one way to say it, but really what it is we're adding a step in the hiring process that wasn't there previously. Previously, if your position was budgeted for, you can go ahead and get the ball rolling and reposting it. You don't have to go back and get authorization from your committee before you repost it. We're simply re-implementing, I shouldn't say re-implementing, we're simply adding the step of going to your committee and having this conversation so that the committee members, the department heads, everybody in the city, and anytime a position opens, we can be well aware of what is on the horizon and some tough conversations we're going to have going into the 2026-27 budget cycle. And again, I don't mean this to be doom and gloom, but what I am trying to do is prepare everybody for the reality of the budgeting limitations that we are under. And so I think it's just better, rather than say hiring freeze, it's like, let's just have this conversation as we go throughout the year. And I think it's super important to know that, you know, this conversation came out of a conversation that myself, the mayor, and Crystal as the finance chair had when we're looking at wages, which is something we've been looking at for some time here. And it just so happens we're here at Public Works because Norris just happened to be the first person to retire and become a vacant position after we started having these conversations. And so know that it's not a targeted effort at Public Works position specifically. It's just that you're the first group to go through this.
Are there any other departments that you anticipate this might be happening?
Hard to say, but I think every year we have one or two full-time employees either simply just change their employment, right? Who just leave for various reasons. So we don't expect that this is going to be the last one that it happens to this year.
Anybody else have any comments? Crystal, you.
Well, I just wondered if you have a rough idea of the budgetary impact, dollar-wise.
Of him not being, or not
Of-
replacing him?
Of
or-
replace,
of-
well, yeah, we know, we can kind of guess where where it is with him gone, but how will it impact the budget by hiring someone?
Well, I don't know the total of Norris's, that position's fringe benefits. But I would say typically we've been hiring and within a year are within about $5 an hour of where Norris would be now. So that would be, you know, times your full-time wage. As mentioned, I was hoping so that would be paying less initially, but again, you never know, right? It depends on if the person takes out our health insurance or not. And that now is directly impacting the picture. We do want to use some of that when we promoted Kyle Hansen into the position of operator in training. He never got any increase, and we were hoping that this would be an opportunity for him. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a $5 an hour savings right off the bat. But that's probably kind of a good idea. I don't know exactly the impact for it to not be hired again, but I would say that would be a very complicated analysis because it's not a game where you just say that's not ever going to be an expense for us anymore for that entire position, right? We got to do something about not having a full plow staff, or, you know, how are we going to need more summer help, or it's a complicated question, but.
Thank you.
Would like to say, for as long as I've ever remember, street department's always been the ones that I won't say the word, we get the jobs that nobody else wants. So whoever it's always been that way. I don't know, maybe it will change, but it seems like we always get whatever nobody else wants. And if they take another guy away, and then two, anything we ever do, right now, if you don't hire Norris's position back, there's 3 guys, and you gotta have 2 guys just about at every job you do. There ain't not a lot of jobs you can do at Public Works you're gonna do with 1 guy. You can weed eat, yeah, but most jobs you want at least 2 people, not 3. And so now, well, you're only gonna have 3 if you take, because Tyrell and Wade, right, Mark's a mechanic, and then you got I better not call him Credo, Scotty Peterson, and Kyle, and Dustin Dahl. So you only got 3 more guys. So if you take Norris out of the equation, you got, which you already are, he's gone. So that leaves, you're gonna have a small crew. You ain't gonna be able to get the work done that you probably could have otherwise. Then summertime, I know you got summer help comes in, but they're not nearly experienced. They can run too much equipment. I've never seen that we've ever had can run too much equipment. So
Yeah, they have a very specific role, and like 6 is a very good number for a crew, right? And when you start messing with it and it's 5, you have a different sort of combinations and efficiencies that you're able to get done.
In response to your comment about you always get stuck doing things, it was explained to me at a meeting on Monday that utilities can't do certain things, right?
Well,
Without being paid.
yeah, I was gonna say, we're a one-way street at the utilities. Meaning, if you guys in the general fund want to give us money, we can take it, but we can't give you our money for things that are not utility specific. And that's when I say our money, it's more specifically with the water utility, but we're really regulated by the Public Service Commission, and it's a user-based funding system. And so we can't sort of funnel money from water rates to go to the police department, for example.
I just thought that kind of explained why you guys always seem to get stuck with everything.
like that for as long as I can remember.
Yeah. So Nate, if we say, no, we really need this position filled, so then what happens?
Yeah, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, right? I am 100% not saying that. What I am simply encouraging is the conversation about positions and be ready to have more conversations. I think based on my conversation with Sarah, it would be extremely premature to not renew that position because we haven't gone through the steps of really analyzing positions across the city and seeing where we can shift or pivot or save money or be more efficient or whatever it may be. We haven't had the conversation with the council about any services that we're offering, not just in Public Works, but across the city that maybe like, if push come to shove, this might have to be something we let go of, right? That's what we're talking about here is contraction or reduction of the amount of services we're able to provide to the community because it's just gotten too expensive to do the same thing. And it's at the cost of the employees who are not being paid a competitive wage to do those things. And that's something that is I find fundamentally unfair. And it's something that I know the council would be well, I shouldn't say that. That's not my job to say what the council would do or not do. But it's been conversations that at least the mayor and we've had with the finance chair about trying to gain ground that we definitely lost on wages. So I'll get off my soapbox and just simply say, if you approve this, then we just move forward as planned, and then just know that we're going to have conversations about positions in the city later on as we get into the budget cycle, and the budgeting conversation will start earlier this year as a result of it. So is that sort of what you were looking for, Cindy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Seth, are you on?
I am. I appreciated a lot of Nate's explanation about the difference between what was considered a hiring freeze and just what this extra step is to now, analyzing where we move forward. So I'm here and I'm kind of agreeing with needing to move forward and maintaining this position.
AJ?
Yeah, your current budget is for 6 guys, right? It's
Correct.
set. That's what it is. It's what's needed. Everybody in the room's kind of worked in the same probably job where they've known what it's like to be shorthanded. And I know we just got help back at billing clerk and with Sarah coming back, and it helped a ton. So Cheryl knows kind of being extra chair and extra duties, and I mean it makes sense to go and fill the position. I know it's tough to have conversations are going to have to be had, and that's down the road, but you get 6, 7 months to train somebody. It's better than 2. So
Come winter, we're gonna need somebody to plow.
I'm gonna step in here. It's
Yeah.
not just winter, it's everything. With the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're gonna have 3 guys painting, probably for the minimum of 2 months.
Oh, the street?
Yes, it takes 2 months and we're getting more stuff to paint this year. One guy will be sweeping. One guy will be mowing. That's it. That's our crew right there. So there is no crew. That's basically a maintenance crew. And Tyrell has been great about working at the library. He ain't gonna be able to do that all the time. Come up here and help Lori. He ain't gonna be able to do that because we ain't gonna have anybody. Does one guy make a big difference? You bet it does. It makes a big difference. And I know we have summer help, but like to Todd's point, Sarah's point, it's basically weed eating or mowing or filling a body. Today we had Tyrell gone for half the day and 3 guys were grinding stumps. I was sweeping and had to go with Sarah for a little bit, and that's, we didn't have anybody. So yeah, it's not just a winter. Winter is big, don't get me wrong, but it's more than that. And we have some projects this summer. Not sure how we'll do them because
My thought was that if the roads don't get plowed or the streets don't get plowed, we're really gonna hear about that one. But
I'm
Yeah.
kitching it right now. How come I haven't been out sweeping yet? Well,
Oh,
for one,
really?
it's been too
Yeah.
wet, and 2, just
yeah.
get it when you can.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay,
Well, and I just
Yes, Kristen.
wanted to say that, the whole thing about this was to try and keep the good staff we have, because we are very, very fortunate here to have who we have. And paying them better and market wage is gonna, or at least closer to a market wage, is gonna help keep them. The one thing that I don't want to see happen is that our departments become crippled. And we're going to probably be asking for more efficiencies, as we move forward. That's just one of the things that I guess it's common sense.
What do you mean by efficiency?
Well, I don't know. I mean, at this point, I said, we've always been a city who did more work with fewer people. And I said, each time every one of you covers for someone else in your department or another department, that is extremely hard because you're doing your job and someone else's too. And we're getting close. If we're getting down to just a few people in a department, we still need to get the work done. But is there, we're going to go look to the workers and say, are there ways we can do this more efficiently? So that's what I meant. Thank you.
And another way to look at your point about paying them better is they could leave just because they have to work so darn hard and may not have to work so darn hard somewhere else too. So,
this is AJ. I make a motion that we go forward in filling the street auxiliary worker position.
Todd, I'll second it.
okay, motion by AJ, second by Todd. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Review and approval. Oh, I keep reading the wrong one. Review and approval of pay request number 4, Main Street Tap Project.
Okay. Share my screen here. Okay, so we finally have another pay request for Main Street. As you can see, things are starting to pick up again, and that means we need to pay them. So this amount is kind of confusing how he highlights things, but I find it so interesting the DOT process doesn't go like this. And so all the contractors and the inspector who does DOT projects pretty much only is a little confused by everything. But there's, $237,655.31 is what they're asking for in this pay request. And so you've more or less seen the work that's been happening. For the most part, we're on target. I will say that you'll notice, well, this gap is because there is, keeps doing that. This is the markings, the paintings that I am so anxiously awaiting. But there are other things that aren't quite where we think they should be. A lot of it is the electrical contractor just does not submit his expenses, which I don't know how you do a business when you don't get paid, but it is what it is. They just aren't, they've been asked for information and to the point where the general actually like put things in for them because they wanted to get them something. So there are a few that are over, but they're not truly over in the same sense, except for a few of them. So this one that's at 111% is a 2x3 inlet that was added to the project. This was to rectify the situation where we ran into a private storm sewer and needed to make some changes to that. And then this 8-inch storm sewer pipe was also related to that. And connect to the existing storm sewer, we actually ended up running into that significantly 3 more times than expected. One was the situation with the private storm sewer. Another was 2 other businesses in the downtown that had storm drains connected to the back of the inlets that weren't originally accounted for. Let's see, these lines are sometimes hard to follow. I think that's more or less it. This again is remove storm structure, so they had to take that one out at the private storm sewer. They had to reset it because had nothing left of it once they took it out. The concrete curb, pedestrian curb is at 180, which sounds bad, but it's actually a savings because in front of the insurance agency on South Street on the northwest corner, there was supposed to be a new retaining wall put in, and instead they just left the retaining wall and put the pedestrian curb in. So it's a savings, but there's more in that quantity.
Are they going to slope it, that bank? Is that what you're talking about? The Veterans Memorial?
That as well. It's not in here, but the Public Works Department is helping another department like we talked about before. We're going to try to they're going to put a pedestrian curb, which is like a curb on the other side that you normally see it on. So it's like a curb for the pedestrians, and they're going to build it up about a foot so that when Wade gets to go grade it, he doesn't have to go quite so far down. He can match into something that's a foot higher. And it also helped keep the structure in. Yeah. No, we might need a little mini for you to have fun with. Yeah, but that is going to get fixed.
Thank you.
The contractor took it out without additional cost. So it was a significant help. They had like that little grapple arm kind of thing. It worked quick. It's pretty swift. So everything else is as expected. I can get more into the project status when we get to the update.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, you want to make a motion to pay the pay request?
This is AJ. I make a motion that we approve the pay request number 4 for the Main Street tap project.
Todd will second it.
Any further questions? Discussion? Okay. Roll call.
Crystal,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
and Andrew.
Aye.
Review and approval of pay request number 5, 2024 sewer project.
And that was my fault. I said 5 to Joy and it was 6. So it is pay request 6. Okay, so this one is more what we normally see. We have the current payment due of the $151,372.43. This would be for the sewer project. More or less, everything is as expected with a few things. One is the One is the granular fill, which where I was trying to see it here. So we ended up finding that we had a lot poorer materials, gosh, I can't talk, than anticipated. And so there's usually this granular select backfill where we end up having higher numbers than expected. So it happened on Broadway is more related to the fact that we had an additional sewer lateral crossing. I'm trying to find the other one here. It's on Chicago. So here, for example, this one we saw earlier. Again, that was on Sands Road that we ended up catching some of that. And then, gosh, where is it? Never find things when I need to. In any case, it's essentially, we're just running into some materials that are just not suitable to put back in. Especially, like I said, in Sands Road and on Marquette, where they basically kind of got people just like threw materials in there, concrete, there's an old waterway, and yeah, we are putting it back properly. It was a landfill area, so it's not surprising that the area around it was maybe not perfect. What else? So it looks like there's more or what they call like our base material, that 1 1/4 inch, but they substituted that for 3 inch in some cases. So if you look at the 3/4, or excuse me, the 3 inch versus the 1 1/4, the total of the two adds up to the same amount. And then the unit cost was the same. So it's just a wash, but it just doesn't look like it. What other really important part? I guess the other thing is that we finally have all our stored materials paid out. So as you remember, we have these stored materials at the beginning and the amount just continually reduces. And so now they've paid out all the stored materials. So essentially they're put within the contract where the numbers originally should be. And that's really it. Happy to answer questions, but that's pay request number 6.
Want to make a motion to pay, Todd?
Okay, this is Crystal, and I would move that we pay request number 6 for the sewer project in the amount of $151,372.43.
Start, second it.
Motion by Crystal, second by Todd. No, I have to do roll call. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Cindy,
Aye.
Seth,
Aye.
Todd,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and Crystal.
Aye.
Motion carries. Approval for amendment to KLM Engineering Service Agreement for water tower inspection.
So this, see you, Wade, thanks for coming. This is essentially a clerical change. There's no change to the actual contract per se, except for the fact that just one of the more expensive inspections kind of slid off the schedule. So essentially, we pushed off any of our what they call dry tank cleanout inspections. We pushed it off a year. And so they wanted to reflect the actual year in which they were doing the work on the new contract. And so that's essentially what we have here. The first time they sent it to me, the number was not what it was before. So I sent it back and they, without argument, sent it back to us the way it should be. But again, this number is higher than this number only because there was a dry tank inspection in 2028, but we didn't want to have only 2 years between them because, we clean everything out. It takes a while to accumulate the sediment for us to want to do that again. So just looking for approval for the amendment to this agreement we've already signed with them.
This is AJ. I'll make a motion to approve the amended agreement to the KLM Engineering Service for the water tower inspections.
This is
This
Crystal.
is Seth.
A motion by AJ, second by Seth. And I don't think we need anything for that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Center Avenue project update.
Woohoo, we're finally there. Okay, so concrete's not moving as fast as it feels like it should, but there is a lot of different parts they pour that are adjacent to another spot that they pour. Pardon? Did I say Center Avenue? Oh, why am I looking? I'm looking at something completely different. I don't know why. I like went to all of the amended agenda and I stuck that in there. No, I was skipping it. Sorry, Center Avenue. Okay, Center Avenue. My apologies. I heard you say that and my brain looked at the agenda item. Okay, so Center Avenue, we advertised, it's in the paper this week. And we're just trying to get a good version out there for folks to bid on. We're hearing some good things about people looking for work, which is always really helpful when you're putting a bid out. We talked about having a public meeting, and I was thinking of having it sooner than later, but the engineer suggested we wait till the bid comes in, because then we have the contractor with us, because there are a lot of options that are in the contract, and meaning like whether they start this year or start next year. And so it'd be nice at the meeting to tell people when something's actually going to happen instead of saying you might have a project this year. And, so I thought that was a smart idea, especially since at this point it's public information, not necessarily public consultation. One of the main things that came out of that for me was thinking about the wanting to put a trail, like a asphalt sidewalk, essentially that multi-use trail on the west side of the street. It would not encroach on anyone's property more than the sidewalk is, but it would just be something that's there. And so we want to make sure people are aware. A lot of it is like adjacent to parking lots, not necessarily a person's house. But again, they're not getting any change to their property line. If anything, they get the benefit of being cleared for them. We had the electrical engineer come in today to look at the lighting. And so I actually did, when I went through the budget, I realized that I had the loan amounts, the way that I had calculated them, I basically had an assumption that there was 30,000 more that we could borrow from the DNR. So I told the lighting folks to look at 120,000 up to 150,000 for the budget to make sure we fall into budget and we can be conscious about what we're choosing. And when they looked at it, there's a lot of supplemental lighting, like meaning Excel power poles that are over top of existing lines. And so he came out today and worked with Wade to figure out which line like circuits they're on. Because for example, there's a light in front of the post office that has one control panel and it controls that one single light. Whereas the box beside it controls like 30 of them, right? And it's just because of when we did the projects, essentially. That was like the leftover of the project from when we did Rock Avenue. So they went through that. I think we're in a pretty good spot and we're really fine tuning it.
Anybody have any questions about Center Avenue? Main Street project update.
Now
How's
we
the
can talk
cement?
about what I was talking about. Cement. Cement, that's taking more time than I would like. I was hoping they would be done yesterday. And I'm going to send out an update tomorrow about where they are. It just they got pushed back with the rain, and then everything like the red concrete needs to be poured, and then the next section needs to be poured, and everything has this sequencing, which is probably not terrible in the long run. We probably have, more joints and better sustainability with our concrete, but yeah, it's a process, but we are so close. We have a South Street traffic light. So far, so good. I've had a number of people tell me they had someone blow the red light right in front of them. So that is a concern. And so we did think this is a thanks to the sheriff's department. I had called them on Friday and said, or Thursday rather, and said, you have a message board. That was an idea I got from the DOT, because I was like, what do you do besides having a light on, right? Like, how do you make it more obvious? And they said that often that's what they do, is have like a signboard up. And so the county had one, the sheriff's department Tim, yeah, Wade and Nate Campbell came on Friday and put it up, and it says like street lights, traffic pattern change. I thought it would be most helpful for the people going northbound, just because you're kind of coming in from out of town and there's not a lot going on. All of a sudden you hit this construction. And I think some of it is that. Is it just so much going on? There's still so many lane changes that it's hard to focus on the change. It's just chaos. But we're getting there. They did the patches in front of the bus garage is now open, and some of the other ones that made the traffic patterns really weird, like because it was our repair work that we were doing, and so they just have to finish those 2 intersections. Again, should be done in 2 days, and then they cure. So early next week we should have things open, and then they said the week of the 12th, which is that next week. They're going to have the painters in, which I just can't wait for because I feel like that's going to change everything. But yeah, so far so good.
Great.
Is this the one that needed to be done by a certain time?
Yes, it's well past that deadline. So what we can do is take some of the engineering inspectors' bills and charge them for it from overtime, and we should.
Put that towards the salt shed?
Yeah. Or just the budget, because eventually like the DOT project pays to a certain point at a prorated rate, and then after that we just pay for everything. And so, contributing to the project we've had here and there, but it's certainly something we could think about. We're doing well budget wise for that, but again, like anywhere we can save, we want to max out as much of the DOT budget, like contract. What am I trying to say? Grant as possible. And then after that, any savings we can have is good. But yeah, the one thing that we have to think about is the bus garage took them more time. So they're gonna ask for accommodation to that. And then there was one other thing that happened that was actually our fault. That they got pushed back. I'm trying to remember what it is. I have to think about it. Yes, that whole private sewer, storm sewer thing. So there'll be a few things that they're gonna say, like, it wasn't our fault that the design didn't include that or whatnot. So anyway, but I don't think it's certainly not as many days as they've taken.
Good question. Okay.
Sarah, are we going to be spreading the black dirt out here, or are they doing that?
No, and they should be doing that right now. So they brought it out and then it rained and then it was wet and they didn't want to work with it. And then it rained all last week. And so it's just between the weather and catching them when they're here, because I would say this is one of the challenges about this project is that there's a grounds crew that does landscaping. There's a crew that does removals. There's a crew that does the pipe work. It's just like there's crews that do everything. And so if they're not here and they're not scheduled, but I will press on them to get here this week because it's a beautiful week to do work.
Another good question.
I just know that when there was people out there on this past week, there was kids playing on it and they were throwing it at cars.
Oh, no.
So that's why I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, no.
I shouldn't laugh, but that's, yeah. Yeah, just
Yeah.
distribute it.
You're in charge of it.
Okay. Sewer project 2024 update.
Okay, we are getting there here. Sorry, just sending my kids calling me. He needs to walk here. They're getting moving on everything. They're gone for this week, which I was just like, you have to be kidding me this week is the best week to ever do work. But they're at a good spot. So they've been working on coming around the bottom of the Hanson farm and in the waterway area there. And they've worked their way up Sands Road, and there was a number of things. We repaired the pipe that was in front of O'Reilly's. They did a water or a sewer service, and then they actually pounded the casing under the highway. And you wouldn't necessarily know except for hearing it. I felt so bad for O'Reilly. It was like bouncing off the like tin on the outside of the building, and I went in thinking it must sound terrible, and it actually wasn't that bad. So they've been such good sports. I will say that business has dealt with us being in their space, and I go in there thinking they're going to be a little bit growly, and they're just always really supportive. So, I got to thank them for being so awesome. But yeah, and so then the next step is they're going to open up Main Street. So we're going to be kind of closing one area, which is actually nice. I thought they'd be stacked, and then open in another. So, yeah, he keeps calling me. He should be okay. But I think, we're all doing pretty good, and it should be the major parts next week, starting to open up Main Street, and hopefully it's like 2 weeks of that and we're done the project. So,
Great. Street department update.
um,
I feel like I already had that.
right. Well, and Wade was here. So, Wade says that they've been taking the wing off the grader and dump trucks. He's been sweeping, doing brush and compost. I just lost it. Getting the sanders off of the dump trucks. They've cut a few trees. They're working on stump grinding. They've been working on signs for Main Street. We've been getting ready to do our painting and figuring out like where the new parking stalls are going to be. And then, they're getting ready for the mowing season and patching and, like you said, painting. So
Okay,
that's about it.
how about utilities? Cheryl, you get to
Yeah,
talk.
you do that while I talk to.
Well, I'm Sarah Kay. Our billing clerk has been here now just under 6 weeks, and it's kind of like we said she was on an extended vacation because she's picked up right where she's left off. It's been a smooth transition. She has alleviated a lot of my stress and I have been able to really catch up well. I have one big thing I need to do yet. Otherwise, I will be caught up, I'm assuming by mid next week for the first time since last midsummer. So it feels good and she's doing well. I think the office as a whole is glad to have her back. So that's going well. The lead service line grant that was approved, or the different structure of grant, was approved last week at council. We're going through the final steps and we should have more firm timeline on Friday when we'll be able to start getting the customers their refunds, or their reimbursements, I should say. Anyways, that's about it.
Great.
Okay, let's see. Greg's got on his list. They ended up having a sewer repair here on Gillette. It took them a couple times to get it where they needed it. They have treated and cleaned both wells, so that's good. That's one of those things that we try to do on a semi-annual basis. He figures they're 60% done jetting. They've got a couple days left of flushing, so that's always a big thing. I always notice that you do a good job of notifying people, because when I went to the food co-op, they had their sign posted on the bathroom door. Yep.
Notify individually.
I bet, yeah. The tower inspection guy is coming, so they're doing a visual inspection tomorrow at the industrial park, and then we're draining Eckhart Park. And they have been having some problems with the Lincoln lift station pump, but they think they're going to pull it and repair it. And lots of construction related stuff and lots of digger hotline tickets. Yeah, that's down by you.
I see him down there and I'm always, what are you guys doing?
Right? All right, I think that's about all I have for today. I've been talking for a long time.
Okay. I guess we're down to second period for public comment. Is anybody still on, Nate? Anybody on public want to make a comment? Now is your chance. Okie dokie, I take that as a no. Adjournment.
It's Todd to make a motion to adjourn.
Zajel, second.
Motion by Todd, second by AJ to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.